You was a kid.
Good day, peoples. Big Said, industry cosign, back in action. For those tuning in for the first time, my name is Big Said, industry cosign. The name of this program is My Friends Are Better Than Yours. And for those that don't know, I've been doing interviews for a couple of years now, and I'm sick of speaking to celebrities, and I'm pretty sure they're sick of speaking to me. But the purpose of this is to acknowledge people that I've either worked with, I'm friends with, or whatever for over the years. And today we have Ken Gibbs Jr. Um, I typically, no, I don't. I'm about to say I typically do a short bio. But I don't because I be flubbing over my words. But I'll let him introduce himself and then we'll go into it so that way you can find out why I chose to have this man in front of me today.
All
Take it
right. No doubt, no doubt. Well, I mean, now that you firmly established that I'm not a celebrity, uh, so, hey, I mean, I'm a long time digital professional. That's actually how we met. I've been
Yeah.
doing this for over 25 years. Came out of Boston, working with Henry Louis Gates and those guys at Africana.com, Black Voices, Essence, Interactive One, BET, you name it in the Black space, I've done it, but also Amazon, Spotify as well. Oh, Ebony too.
Yeah. The good thing about what you've done and what you've been doing is you were involved in the digital space at a time where it was literally just beginning. What led you down that path in order to basically beat everyone else to it? Because I know like when you and I were first involved in it, like it was still a new thing and some
Yep.
people weren't sure of it. What led you to the digital space? And you know, yeah, you can go into that as far as like what made you go into the
Yeah.
digital space.
Freedom, freedom, right? Freedom of publishing, not having to necessarily, I think, wait in line for your time and opportunity in traditional media in terms of rising through the ranks and what have you, like print, magazines, all that stuff, and just the opportunity to do something new and innovate, right? Like you, so back in the day, the Source, XXL, Vibe, all that stuff. If you were a fan of that, it would have been a Herculean task to print one up and produce it, right? Like you just couldn't do that. But anybody with a computer in their room, in their house, could do anything on the web, right? You could print, you could do audio, you could make videos, and just the opportunity to be able to do all that stuff yourself without having to go through the gatekeepers, like that really just attracted me to it. But then also the connectivity, right? Just reaching out to people like yourself in New York. I used to watch what you and Ray Tamara were doing back in the day. It was
Crusade.net.
industrycosign.com. Yes.
Crusade.net before the industry cosign, the Crusade.net.
Yes, the Crusade.net. Yes, yes. Like, so basically what I used to do was I used to like work with labels and things in New York, like do get interviews and get invited to parties and what have you. But I didn't know who anybody was, right? So I would go to the Crusade.net, look at the pictures and stuff, and be like, oh, okay, so that's XYZ editor in this magazine, and I might go and like try to pitch them for a story, what have you. So but even like Chuck and Greg from All Hip Hop, right? So just the connectivity and being able to speak with and just link and build with like-minded individuals throughout the culture.
Definitely. I think I'm glad you brought that up because sometimes I forget about the Crusade. But the great thing about the Crusade, as you stated, was besides me being there, we went to the parties, we took the pictures, and as you just said, we would just be talking to people, and sometimes you're like, wait a minute, who's that person? And then the difference between us and other sites when they started doing it was we labeled everyone. We made sure
Hmm.
the audience knew who was at the parties, which made it easy because, like you said, you may have been talking to Big Said all this time, and back then you didn't know that who Big Said was because whatever you go to the site and you're like, oh, that's Big Said. I've seen,
Exactly.
and it worked. And I know that when we first started that, I didn't know that that was the precursor to what social media would end up being on a
Mhm.
different scale. But as you stated, just being there and just being at the forefront when nobody knew what it was, or people were still engrossed in magazines and just everything that was regular at the time, and to be at that point at that time was definitely good, and part of the reason why I'm still here because, like, I didn't like anything else. Now let me stop. But okay, but so when you went into the digital space, in what capacity, in what role, um, what would you consider? Because there's marketing, there's writing,
Mhm.
there's publicity. What was your point of entry? Because I know, and the thing is, I know that you've done it all in
Yeah.
essence. But what was your
Mm.
point of entry where you knew that it was a solid position for it to be the past 25 years that you've been involved, more than 25 years, I should say.
I mean, I think it evolved, right? So, like we started talking about the magazines. I think writing was the first way that most people entered into it because that was the first opportunity, and it was easy. You really only had the bandwidth for text back then, right? You was on a baud modem and what have you. And for context, we're talking like 1999,
Yeah.
2000, right? So I was a writer. So initially, like I went to school for writing. Writing, professional writing, communications, technical writing, and a minor in African American studies. So I did my first internship at Design News. It was a magazine. I was like, okay, I get it. But that was like literally putting pages on the wall, proofing them, everybody walking around. I was like, yo, this shit is crazy. Oh, excuse me. Right. But I was like,
Hours at a time, hours at a time.
yeah, right. So I was like, this is crazy, right? Like all of this goes into making this magazine that we see every 30 days, right? And so, but I had always just been a nerd and into computers and stuff like that. So as the web was developing, AOL, all that, I was getting more into it. So as I'm in school, like I was on one of the first connected campuses, I had a computer in my room, like I'm just on the internet 24/7. And after I did that internship, I was like, yeah, these magazines are cool, but I think the web is going to take that over quickly, right? So instead of going for a magazine, I need to find a website. During that time, everything was happening out west, right? I barely had enough money to get to school. Like I did not have enough money to go out west, right, to do an internship. So I looked to see what was closest to me, and that's how I got with Henry Louis Gates and those guys. Like literally, I was looking in the paper for job advertisements, like the newspaper Boston Globe and Africana.com was looking for a staff writer. I went in there, interviewed, got the gig, and I was like, but as like to sweeten the deal, I can work for free, right, for 3 months because I had to do that for my internship,
Yeah.
just to get credit, and so that's how I got in.
That's always the entry points is always for me it's always interesting because sometimes we go into something and end up in something else, or if we go into it like something comes out. I mean, because I was an intern at Motown Records.
Mm,
As a matter of fact, it was just funny because I wasn't even think I wasn't a writer. I had no like I had the only thing I did with magazines was read it.
mm,
So for my entry point into it was funny because um once I did start writing, then I kind of became an entrepreneur because I wasn't writing for a magazine. I was writing for the Crusade.net, a site that Ray Tamara and Tim Moore, God bless the day, he passed away
mm,
a couple years ago. They
yeah.
were just doing this, and they were doing it for the pictures and stuff like that. When I came in, like I took it to such a bigger level. Then I had an interest in writing it, and I just started writing, and then I've been writing ever since. So I didn't know that I was writing or I was going to be a writer, but I knew that I was going to be in the music industry because I always had a love for the industry in general because I used to sing. But
See,
what I want to find out from you is, being that you were there at the beginning of the digital landscape, I guess particularly in hip hop, since we both worked in hip hop, and hip hop was still new at the time as well. So I always correlate the hip hop business, not hip hop itself, but the business of hip hop and the
mhm.
digital realm kind of coincided. When you did start writing and doing things in the digital space and being involved in hip hop wasn't where it is now, of course. Did you anticipate that hip hop would be at a level where it was so big that nothing would overtake it, and still hasn't overtaken it. And I also say that it was kind of like lawless. When I say lawless, I don't mean like in a bad way. I mean like everybody did what they wanted to do, or people
Mhm.
did things that they felt should have been done because no one had done hip hop on a business level.
Mhm.
How do you feel like the digital space helped with the growth of hip hop becoming so commercially successful?
In a number of different ways, right? Like, so I think what was easy to see about magazines was that the culture was moving much faster than you could cover in 30-day cycles, right? Like through the mixtape scene and what have you. Like shit what happened. Like you would listen to things and you'd be like, well, damn, but they were just talking about this in the magazine, like and this already passed based on what they're saying on the tape. And so the speed of culture had to find a medium, I think, that could really match it, right? And in search of that, I think one reason, one of the reasons the hip hop culture and the web were just such kindred spirits was because of that, right? But then I think also the reality of hip hop being young black culture, barred from all other traditional media outlets, right? So rather than wait for that acceptance, the culture really took advantage of this technology as opposed to other genres, right? And also being kind of on that bleeding edge of culture, because black culture has kind of always been leading in that subculture undercurrent in that way, but it had to wait for exposure, right? That cultural exchange would normally come through some show, some late night or variety show allowing an act to appear, whether it be Saturday Night Live or something like that, right? So instead of having to wait for that moment, hip hop culture just found its way to the world through the web, right? And alongside that, with the artists taking advantage, you found like all these businesses, right? In like journalistic personalities, right, that exist today, right? And for me, it's really crazy to see that continue really with the podcast space, right? Like in no reality is anyone thinking that a network is going to give Joe Budden a talk show, right? Yet it proves that he's got a super successful one, right? Because he follows the innovation of the innovative spirit of the culture. Boom, does his own thing, right?
Yeah, it's crazy, and I think that because of the newness of the space and nobody knew exactly where it was going to go. Because I remember when we started when I was working with industry cosign, the Crusade, before I started the industry cosign, like people that worked at magazines were looking at me like they looked at the internet space like they looked at how disco was. Like disco's a fad, the same way they looked at hip hop when hip hop first became a thing.
Yes.
So, but it's funny because I used to have conversations with people that were working at Vibe and these magazines at the time,
uh,
and I'm saying to them, I'm like, "Are y'all gonna do a website component? Why? Like, who goes to a website?"
yes, yeah, it was lesser than, right? Because again, I think you got to realize from a generational perspective, it has been a privilege to publish, right? Like someone had to allow your words to get to print and go all around the world like that, right? And that's what everyone was coveted, you
Yeah,
know. And it was like the internet, anybody can put that out there, like no credentials, I mean, because so after Africana, we got bought, ended up being AOL Black Voices. They relocated me to New York. I was freelance writing for like the Source and stuff, and I would always talk to writers like, "Oh man, you start a website, man." They was like, "Yeah, right." Like, get out of here with that website shit, And it was, and I get it. It was for the time.
very true. Now I'm gonna go a little left a little because you've always worked within content.
Mhm.
So it's going to sound like a simple question, but I know it's not, which is the reason why I'm going to ask it.
Mhm.
What is the most important thing about content?
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do with your content,
Yeah.
right? I mean, in all honesty, anything is content today.
Because and the reason why I had asked it that way is because the meaning of content has changed over the years, but it hasn't. It's a matter of now. It's like when people started branding themselves or using themselves as a brand, like no one thought of themselves or anything that you're doing as a brand. It was like, I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden, I'm a brand. You start hearing people say, I'm a brand. I'm a brand. I'm a brand. I'm a brand. I think it's the same thing with content because, of course, content has always been king. Content will always be king. But I also realized that with the changing of the landscape, like content was always specific. Nowadays, content is me running down the street, filming it. I trip, ha ha ha. Now I got 1 million views. So that's considered content now.
Yeah, but I mean, so like, I mean, hey, at the end of the day, everything is content and everybody's a creator, right? Like, if you really want to get down to the Webster definition of it, right? But I think what's really changed, simply put, is the distribution channel, right? Distribution is now ubiquitous and free. Everyone has it, right? When it was a privilege to do it, right, and there were gatekeepers and you had to do X, Y, Z, it was more so governed by the economics,
Yeah.
right? In all honesty, right? And now that it isn't, right, I think we have to be realistic about what people will watch, right? I mean, and we know people will watch a car crash, right? So why wouldn't they watch somebody, slip on a banana peel or some crazy shit on a YouTube video? Like, why not, right? I got nothing else to do while I'm sitting here,
Sure.
right? I think from a business model perspective, like the predecessors, I never thought people would, right? We had like America's Funniest Home Videos, what have you, but it was the monetization format, right? 30 minutes, commercials, yada yada, broadcast. Now that it's essentially everyone has the capability of a channel, right? It's like, who would have thought that people would upload content for free?
Yeah.
Right? Like, platforms are literally stores that have no products on the shelves unless you stock it with your creative, your emotions, your protests, even.
Now, coming from the background you've come from in a business sense, what are your thoughts about content creators? Because
Mhm.
every year is different titles and different descriptions. But how do you feel about content creators? As you stated in the past, one there was always a gate, and of course
Mhm.
gatekeepers. Then there was always, especially with writing, because with journalism nowadays, I don't understand why it's still labeled journalism with some of the things I read and see, but that's another story. But it seems as if, like before, and I'm gonna use myself as an example.
Mhm.
I have no journalism training, none
Mhm.
whatsoever. I happen to do my own site. Bang! Next thing you know, years later, I'm still doing content. I've been hired at different magazines and things of that nature. When before you needed a degree, you needed recommendation, you needed so many different things in order to be labeled or able to do that. Um, Nowadays, being that there's been an explosion where literally, even as a writer, all you need is a free blog, get a WordPress blog, and you're good. Or as a content creator, all I need is my phone because I have a camera on my phone. One, did you even see that happening from the basis of when we first started many years ago to how it's exploded now? And what are your thoughts on like the whole concept of content creation being the norm as opposed to before it was the exception?
All right. So that's a
I,
lot.
yeah, I'm
Uh,
sorry. And all of that
um,
came to my mind as I'm talking. So excuse me.
okay. I will say it was inevitably headed this way. Um, I I I couldn't have never anticipated, I think, the technology, because I always say my family never understood what I did until the smartphone, right? Like, this content creation and the explosion of it, I think, goes hand in hand with the fact that everybody's walking around with a 4K camera in their hand that's connected, right, and ready to broadcast, right? Like, I would have never anticipated that, like the bandwidth, like, because I was literally like on dial up. My mom's picking up the phone and be
Exactly.
like, "Oh shit," so so
You
I
could be
would have,
online and on the phone at the same time.
yeah, like, in for context, like, I definitely thought, because I was a video gamer, that I would not have to go over my friend's house to play video games anymore. Like, I thought we would be able to play each other like that, right? In terms of like Xbox Live and all that. But I think the devices and everyone having this desire to be a camera person and capture content, but then also just publish anything, right? I would have never anticipated that. Um, because so kind of related to that, we used to always say back in the day at Africana, like if you wanted to get attention, you instead of following these rules, right, and having some integrity and etiquette and what have you as it relates to writing, capturing attention, and all that, you could just post something naked or somebody in the bikini, right? Like easily, these things are more primal; they will get clicks. We used to say that jokingly because we never anticipated like the internet as it is today, right? Like you should see my IG search page. But that's another story. But like as it relates to everything being content, I mean, I think it's a business model that feeds off of everyone's desire to be seen, right? And why is that desire, I think, so deep for everyone, especially quite honestly, if you're not, and yeah, if you're not a white male primarily or woman, right? Or anyone who's subject to an ism, all of those people are traditionally barred out of traditional media, right? Like you've got shows like Friends where you and I don't exist, right? Until there's a media story or what have you, or the one black character on any show, right? Like as opposed to watching or waiting for that or waiting for the second coming of Arsenio Hall, you take advantage of platforms like Twitch and you become Casanat, right? So I think part of the reason that you're seeing this explosion is because there's so much talent out there that we just haven't had the opportunity to even see yet.
And now I say it's too many. No, let me stop.
Well, I mean, hey, part of the problem is that like to a certain extent, there's something for everyone, right? So instead of too many, I feel like it's more just your filter, right? Like people talk about like hip hop, right? And like, oh, it's terrible now. I'm like, it's great. Like we can get an album from Slick Rick in this context, right? In which, whereas if it wasn't for streaming, right, and there was CDs and there was a little bit more politics at the label, that album might not ever see the light of day, right? So this distribution has its ups and downs.
Now I'm going to liken the digital space again to hip hop when I make the statement, but I guess it's similar because like I used to produce music as well. So I
Okay,
remember,
you did everything, Sam.
yeah, so when I started, I remember like of course this is in the late '80s. I remember having to buy a reel, having to
Mm-hmm.
book studio time. Like before we even got to display our talent, we had to spend money on studio time. We had to spend money on a reel. We had to spend money on a producer. There were so many different things where nowadays, literally, all I need is a phone. And if you have a phone, if you have some music, I can say something into the mic. You can grab it, put it into your thing, and next thing you know, you have a song that's ready to be played. Not only that, when we were doing and me and my friends, we had independent labels, so we had to go through the whole
Mm-hmm.
mastering and things like that. So we could go in the studio today, and by the time everything is recorded and then mastered, which might take another couple of weeks, then to get it the vinyl and everything done, that's another month we had to wait because of whatever. So let's
Mm-hmm.
say 2 months from when we completed that song. Now that same song that I just did at 2:30 can literally be on Spotify by 4 o'clock.
Yep.
Do you think, well, like I said, the correlation between with the hip hop example I just used and the digital space, um, the quality of what's being put out there, has it affected it negatively or positively? I said that right. Does it matter?
All right, all right, all right, all right, all right. Let's get into it. So, I mean, I think a few different things, right? One, from a quality perspective, I don't think there's a correlation between like the time that it takes to create and the ultimate quality of the product. All right, because I do think you can have a burst of artistic inspiration, right? Some of the best things that have been recorded are like freestyles and things,
Exactly.
right? Like, oh, you do it in one take, right? So I think that's there as well. But I think it all goes back to the business model, right? I think, you know, I always say it's art versus inventory, right? Is it art or is it inventory? I think the streaming model treats it as inventory, right? It's artists are rewarded more so for quantity of art versus the quality of it. All right. When people actually had to get up and go and purchase something, right? That level of effort, I think, was also part of their consideration set, right? As opposed to now, it's just like, oh, well, I'm going to the gym. I need something new to listen to, right? Well, there's a new record from so and so. Not his best. He knows it's not his best, right? But he knows that, like, hey, I'm just basically going to keep putting some assets in there. I'm getting more streams, yada yada, right? So part of it is business model.
Now that okay, so now, well, I always feel I felt with certain people based on their positions, even when they're working with brands, that they may have the mindset of an entrepreneur. And I
Okay.
know now you're doing your own thing as well. So you've worked at like major brands,
Mm.
and like the work you're doing now, of course, as an entrepreneur, how has your mindset changed from working within a structured company, even if you were in charge of the department? 'Cause I know you've been in charge of a couple of departments.
Uh,
But how does your mindset change? Because now you're in charge of everything as far as it being your business. How
uh-huh.
has that mindset changed? And have you always had the mindset? And another thing before you even answer, I've always told people that there are people who can definitely who can definitely work within the constraints of a company, but can't run their
Mm.
own business,
Mm.
and vice versa. So, one, did you ever have the entrepreneurial mindset while you were working with brands because you were able to run the departments? And how does your mind work these days now that you're doing your own thing?
Got it. Ain't nothing changed but the budget, right? Plain and simple. Because I've always kind of been on the forefront of pushing digital initiatives within traditional media organizations, I've always had to act almost in a role of always, I guess, in the capacity of an in-house entrepreneur. Right. And to that extent, I always say about content, especially when you're in-house and you've got budgets and resources that you're held accountable for and what have you. Um, Everybody wants to make content, right? And essentially, these people are giving us some money to make some content. If that content does not generate the traffic, right, in order to meet the impression goal or the ad campaign, what have you, we will not get any more money to make content, right? So I think because of that, I've always been really focused on making sure that the content does what it's supposed to, and that's what I said earlier. Like what does that content need to do? Does it need to simply entertain, right? Have like the viral nature that people will share because of its entertaining factor? Is just something that's more so marketing, right? To drive people to watch something, right? Or buy tickets, yada yada. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Like some of the questions that come, it literally comes as I'm talking because it just comes to me because I'm looking at my notes, and there are
Uh,
certain things I want to ask, and then I'll say something like, well, let me see if I can rotate to this because it might make
uh,
sense. And some of the questions you would be like, and the reason why I'm asking you the type of question I'm asking is because you're in that position to respond. And I never know what is going to come out because if I knew,
well, I
then
got you.
yeah.
So I'll give you a great example, right? When you talk about having an entrepreneurial mindset within when you're in these traditional organizations. I was at BET for almost a decade, right? BET is a cable network. They look at digital primarily as a marketing opportunity, right? Or initially that's how they looked at it, right? I was the one, myself, Jomo, JP, the team who brought them like digital original branded content series that they were able to monetize that way as well, right? And so when you think of like we want to make content, but it's almost like even though we're internal, we've got to eat what we kill, right? So we've got to create concepts, present them, get them sold, what have you. But also because we don't have this big fancy cable budget that comes with the shows or the award shows, we got to find innovative ways to engage the audience, create awareness around the show. We like when you come into the BET offices, it always feels like home, right? That's just the vibe there, period, right? For celebrities, executives, what have you. And we were working on the show with 50, and I posted this clip on LinkedIn. We just literally had him log into the BET account, go live on Facebook with a phone, and walk around the office. Right. So that is literally, no camera, like no big TV camera, no lighting, no set, none of that itemized production stuff that we have to do for all of the other shoots. Right. But extremely successful, engaging, and what have you. So internally, you got to come up with things like that will still kind of, I think, represent your brand, keep a certain standard of quality, right? Whether it be from just overall integrity of the broadcast or actual quality of the broadcast or content rather, but find a way to do it cheap.
Yeah. So does it affect you when you realize that $100,000 budget you have for this particular show or this particular project is like $6,000 now, with the expectation of it being the same way it was at BET? Now, and I know as an entrepreneur, you have to, of course, be innovative. You have to think of different ways, but like, what goes through your mind when you realize you're able to do it based on your ability, but then have to find ways to do it without that extra $94,000 that you had before?
I mean, that's what I do. All right. Not only is that what I do, but I do think that is the spirit of the web. Right. Like, what I do is essentially create and optimize content workflows. All right. In today's world, everyone needs content, but not everyone happens to have a content production operation as their core business, so that they've just got content sitting around on the cutting room floor. Right. So if you're, let's say, a dentist, right, and you're trying to make an impact across social media, but you don't have cameras, lighting rigs, and all this stuff, how do you then create like a content strategy and plan that's gonna allow you to publish consistently to engage the algorithm and the audience? All right. I will help you do that and not come to the table and say, but you do need $90,000, right? Like, no, that's not the answer, right? Like, and part of it, not only do you have the tools, right? People, like I said, walking around with these 4K cameras, but on a daily basis, you're also getting software tools and AI, right, from a content production standpoint that can really help you. Hold on 1 second. I had a call coming in, my phone.
That's more work for you.
Hold. I think my headphone clicked off for a minute. Say something again.
No. I said that's more work coming in for you.
Oh man, hold on. Okay. Huh. I had to reset it real quick.
I thought that was that $94,000 you were looking for to complete that $6,000 project.
Got you now, finally. Jesus Christ. I had like mad calls and texts coming in. And right before we started this, you said nobody wants
exactly.
to
Like, nobody wants to talk to you until you have something to do and you can't be interrupted. Exactly.
My fault.
No,
So I'm sorry, where were we?
It kind of worked into what we were talking about anyway, as far as, because you didn't hear me, but I said that's the call that's going to give you that $94,000 you need for so
but yeah, the tools, man, like literally the tools are impressive, right? They're impressive and they're powerful, and I think on a daily basis, like I said, we're seeing everyone have the opportunity to do what only networks could do in the past.
I kind of liken it to when Wu-Tang's first album, the production quality was not idea at all, but yet it did well enough where it created a career for 8-9 guys. And I say to people sometimes that sometimes it's not the money you put in, but sometimes it is about the talent, or it's about because we see it nowadays where we see some of these programs online where somebody literally just has a phone, not even an optimized phone, but a regular phone. And then next thing you know, they've created a career, or they've gotten 15 million views on something that other people were spending thousands of dollars for the production of. It hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if it's engaging, it will engage,
But but
right?
that, but that's what's the good thing about today, because like as we stated back earlier in the 60s, 70s, or whenever, you had to have these things in order to be able to do these things. Where nowadays it's like sometimes it's timing and luck.
Well, it's a combination, right? Because in the '60s and '70s, you could have made a record, but you would have had to go through all types of hoops just to get it played, right? And I think that's it's like you mentioned Wu-Tang, right? Like they wanted him to be like, "Oh, we love you, Rakim," right? He had
Yeah.
to go this independent route to give us Wu-Tang. And I think more and more now we're hearing all of these stories about how artists originally wanted to do this,
Yeah.
right? But the label pushed them that way. I mean, look at the clips recently, right? The whole situation with that. So how many times has art been compromised because it's been treated like inventory because of the labels or what have you,
Yeah.
right? And this is what the internet solves for. It's all of us, I think, that have to just filter.
Okay. What do you okay? Because I know I have limited time with you, but what direction do you think that we're going in as in not necessarily in the industry, but just the digital space, because we have so many different things, including AI. Actually, you know what? Let me get your thoughts on AI. I know you briefly mentioned it because I know AI is a big thing now. I personally I vie away from it, but I'm getting onto it because my perception of AI has always been Arnold Schwarzenegger in the Terminator robot, and they're going to take over and enslave us. But
Yeah.
actually, like the past couple of shows, when this topic did come up, somebody made me realize that I've been using AI all these years when I use my
Oh
GPS.
yeah.
Certain things.
Yeah.
But what are your
So,
thoughts in general about the AI take over? I would
um,
say inclusion, because it's here.
yeah, I mean, it's just AI for all, right? I think like all of the other tools on the web, AI is just giving so many more people access to something that's so powerful. One of the experiments that I did was at BET I used to have like a 37-person team down there, right? And I was just looking at the org chart and thinking like, okay, which one of these functions that we would have to do could now be done with AI, right? And it was less like taking things away, right? But more so people being able to do more,
Yeah.
right? More with ease, right? And so when you think about it that way, like from an editing perspective, right? You might not be the best editor. Boom, AI can help you edit this video, spit it out, it give you the transcripts, all of that, right? But I also think even from a one-man company perspective, right? When you think of so you said earlier the resources of the larger organizations, right? You can have access to Google Analytics, right? But you might not have a data scientist to really help you sift through everything and give you the type of reports that you want and all of that, right? AI will now do that for you, right? So if you've got a corporate background, you're comfortable with those reports, you know how to analyze and read the data, now you're that much more empowered if you're independent because AI can do that work for you. The research, all right, that you might have some junior team members do on a subject of any kind, right? AI can now do that for you. I do think it it helps to have an informed perspective, right? I think experience is necessary to know to really determine if AI is giving you the right information, right? I think that's very very necessary. And so I do when I think of AI, I just worry about people in the beginning of their career that don't necessarily have all of that deep experience to properly analyze what they're getting back from AI and vet it in that way. Right. So that's one thing I think that everyone has to look out for, regardless if you're in the beginning of your career or you're just engaging AI for something that you know very little about. Right. That's the one thing I think anybody could kind of slip up on.
That's a different aspect from what I've discussed in the past, which is good because I've always thought of people using AI as cheating, but then I had to be convinced that it's not, because sometimes it's an enhancement,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's a lead, because there are nefarious people out there that's going to just do things. So I've always looked at it from that aspect, and like I said, it's still and I tell people, and the younger people I talk to about this, I'm like, when I came up, like I said, when I was in the years with the Terminator, that's the only thing that comes to mind because that was artificial intelligence. And it's like they went into the future. And I'm like, now you actually have robots, like actual robots doing
I
these.
hear you.
So
I
it's
hear
like,
you.
it's kind of scary because sometimes art imitates life or life
Hmm.
imitates art. And I forgot whatever, or actually, we passed a year that it was in the movies when it first came out. I
Uh,
remember somebody did an article or whatever, and
yeah.
you know, but that doesn't mean that it still can't. I'm sorry.
But you know what though? I mean, to me, what's so funny about what you just said is that I think in about 50 minutes time, you went from presenting yourself as an innovator who was on the web first to all of a sudden like saying, get off my lawn about this new technology. Right. And I just think like in closing, that's something you always got to be aware of. Right. Because it's only going to happen even faster going forward.
Yeah, I've become my parents and grandparents. We used to walk 2 miles to school, and now you get to take a bus.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything that you're working on or doing that you would like to talk about or mention, and not specifically projects or
Mhm.
things of that nature, but just in general that you might want to mention?
I mean, hey, no, like I said, I'm working on two cool projects. I mean, one that I can talk about is
Yeah.
CSE, Critical Sports and Entertainment. Um, Working with those guys on their overall digital footprint from site to social stuff. That's so Critical Sports and Entertainment is that's the umbrella brand right there. They do MMA fights, boxing, working on basketball and wrestling in 2026 as well. I've got some cool things that are stealth in the music space. That's actually one of the texts that came in when all my stuff got off.
So,
Really excited about that. Dealing primarily with, again, taking advantage of the freedom that the internet can truly afford artists. I don't think it's streaming, or let's just say I don't think it's the streaming revenue model. All right. I think what we've kind of missed about the opportunities that the technology has given us is that there's no need to really involve the corporations, right? I think you can have a very even exchange between fan and artist, right? In ways that we haven't necessarily explored yet. So excited about that stuff in the coming months.
well, that's good. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time and ignoring phone calls to speak to me and get the people's a sample of who you are and what you've done. And good luck with any and everything that you do. And of course, if you need me, I'm a phone call, text, or AI enabled function away. No,
Don't let me talk to an avatar.
I know, right? But oh, if anybody wants to contact you for any reasons that would make sense for you, I should say,
Mhm.
how can they do so?
Like you see on the screen, I'm at Ken Gibbs Jr. across all platforms. Hit me on LinkedIn. I'm very responsive. I'm very responsive. I always like to talk shop. You got questions, just ask me.
Okay, cool. Once again, thanks for your participation in this edition of My Friends Are Better Than Yours. And for anyone that has stayed until the end, thank you. And as I stated, if you have friends who are better than me, then show me and I'll prove to you that you're wrong and they're probably my friends already. Until the next time, Big Set Industry Cosign, my guest Ken Gibbs Jr.
Thank
And
you.
until the next time, peace out.
All right.